Working in retail is never easy, especially when you have to deal with a bunch of crazies. Welcome to this episode of Tales from Retail. Our first tale is from TilePlaz26. So I wasn't directly involved with this. A coworker told me this happened today before we closed. For some important info, I work at a building supply store as a delivery driver. I'm the only one where I work who is licensed and certified to operate and drive a boom truck. For those who aren't familiar with them, it's a large transport truck with a crane on it for unloading material. So my coworker told me they've been dealing with this customer for several days who couldn't make up their minds on what material they wanted to redo their roof. Today alone, this customer called 5 times. So about an hour before the store was closing, the customer finally decided what they wanted. The customer said, "I want it delivered tomorrow and boomed up to my roof." My coworker informed them that they'll be unable to deliver tomorrow with a boom because their only driver licensed to operate the vehicle was off tomorrow. I worked 5 days this week, so this is my weekend off. The customer wasn't happy. They were saying, "Well, that's no good. I need this delivered tomorrow." And also said, "I'm sure you can have your driver come in just to do my delivery." My coworker snapped back saying, "No, we aren't going to ask him to come in for a delivery. It's the driver's weekend off. He's worked the whole week. He's earned his time off." They told the customer the soonest they could get it delivered if they wanted it boomed would be when my weekend off was done. The customer repeated that it was no good, that they need the material tomorrow. My coworker said, "That doesn't sound like a us emergency. If you need something boomed, we need adequate notice." The customer replied, "Well, I am giving you adequate notice." My coworker explained to the customer that it wasn't adequate notice because they were placing their order within an hour of closing, expecting next day delivery, and pointed out to the customer that if they had decided on the order sooner, they probably could have gotten it today since I was in. Eventually, the customer backed down, agreed to have everything delivered tomorrow, but it would only be dropped off on the ground and not taken up to the roof. But then the customer said, "And when I pay with cash, I get a discount, right?" My coworker bluntly told her no. As my coworker was telling me that, I told them they could throw the law at the customer, that I had already worked 5 days and was near the end of my hours for what I was legally allowed to drive with that truck, just in case the customer decided to make things more difficult in the future. That is a really good point, talking about the hours in driving the vehicle, because I know if you have a commercial license or any kind of license to operate specific vehicles, there's usually hours that you're allowed to operate those tied to it. Fortunately though, with this customer, your coworkers were able to tell them exactly how it was and they didn't make that much of a big deal after the fact. This next one is by Patrick C. Star's Legs. So I work in a phone Wi-Fi provider shop. We set people up with contracts and phones. Customers have accounts with us and we can check when they're due upgrades, add to their bundles, and check bills. One rule is for data protection. Only the account holder and authorized users are allowed any access to the account. We can check if someone is authorized on someone else's account, but if they're not, we can't do anything. This is important later. Authorized user will be shortened to AU for this. So I'm praying for a 4 p.m. close instead of a 5 p.m. when a man comes in and demands I pull up his wife's account so he can see if he's due any upgrades. I pull it up and check if she has any husband registered as an authorized user. She doesn't, so I say, "Sorry, but she'll have to come in herself as she's the only one authorized. You are not an authorized user." And he gets mad. He calls it bullshit and accuses me of being racist towards him and says he's calling the cops and his wife. He leaves to do so and leaves the mall the shop is in completely. I leave a note on the account to say data protection authorization failed. Around 5 minutes to 4, we get a message saying to close the shop, so I pull stuff in and pull down the shutter to below my shoulder as we're required. I'm quite short, so it's down a lot. Do the routine, put stuff away and clock out. Alarm on, lights off, I'm out. Pull shutter all the way down and skip out. And who passes me as I do? Our little friend. He looks super offended and goes to another phone shop in the mall to whine and get a phone. Anyways, Merry Christmas to those who celebrate. Here's to some time off. Enjoy! I don't understand why he's getting so mad because the company's doing their job and protecting his wife's account. Does he want any Joe Schmo coming off the street being able to add 50 upgrades to her account? I don't think so, so he just needs to have his wife add him as an authorized user. This next one is from Not Blaine. About 20 years ago, I worked in a mall kiosk, helped pay the bills while I was in school, and usually had time to read a book during the day. Not a lot of responsibility and a good amount of downtime for minimum wage. There were a bunch of mall regulars and a lot of stories about them. One of my favorites were a couple that the other mall employees lovingly called the Pushers. The Pushers were a pair of adults with developmental disabilities. There was a guy and a girl, probably in their early 20s. They were easy to notice. The guy would be in a wheelchair and the girl would be pushing him around the mall, usually saying hi to all the mall employees. Both nice people, but you could tell they were cognitively atypical. They were very, very childlike. They were in the building like 10 hours a day, every day. They'd have breakfast, lunch, and dinner in the mall. The home they lived in provided transportation to and from, and while I didn't see them buying a lot, you'd always see them together, socializing with everyone in the mall. Often when they'd stop by me, the guy in the chair would ask me to check his watch, to make sure it was the right time. He knew that the clocks went backwards and forwards at different times of the year, but didn't seem to understand when. So pretty much every day I'd work, I'd check it for him and let him know, "Yep, you're still on time." And they'd both laugh, and she'd push him over to the next store. And I thought it was just the most heartwarming thing. Here's this couple that found each other. A lid for every pot type couple. The guy couldn't walk and the girl was by his side helping him get around. They had companionship, were supportive of each other, and a kind of purpose together. And not in an "oh how inspiring" demeaning kind of way, but genuinely made you think the world could be okay. No matter how bad things got, you could always find someone to be with. I wasn't sure if they were in love, but I really hoped it was. One day they came by and I noticed that the girl was now in the wheelchair and the guy was pushing her around. It took a second to register, but I checked his watch, let him know he was on time, they laughed and moved along. I had to have been slack-jawed. Shortly after, I ran over to the mall security guard, next booth over, and asked him if he just saw that. He said, "What, the Pushers? He can walk. She makes him take turns with her every couple of days. You didn't know that? That's not even their wheelchair. It belongs to the mall. They take it every day. They tried to steal it a few times and take it back to the home, but their occupational therapist brought it back. She says he's being lazy." Shortly after that, there was about a week straight where I didn't see them. Really unusual for them. So I again asked the security guard and he told me, "Oh, they're banned for 2 weeks. If you see them, call me." I asked if it was because they tried to steal the wheelchair again. He said, "Nope, they were caught doing something in the bathroom that you shouldn't do in public." Thankfully, he did not elaborate. Never could look at them the same after that. It's amazing how what seemed to be a wholesome story just took a complete 180 by the end, and it just really makes you question humanity as a whole. And our final one is by Lazarus76. So this just happened to me tonight. I work for one of the many convenience stores located across the US. I had this girl come in, probably about 25 to 30 years old, and ask me to go in the cooler to see if I had any more Heinekens in the tall boy can. Now, it's after sundown and I'm working by myself, so I tell her I can't check right now due to safety rules my company has in place. This girl tries to tell me she works in retail too, and that I have to go look. It's like a legal requirement or something. I tell her that I will not be going into the cooler and leaving her in my store by herself unsupervised. Big no-no. This girl actually had the nerve to tell me she would follow me in. I told her that was not going to happen either. She then demands I call my supervisor. Not happening. Not gonna wake them up for this crap. Once this girl figures out I'm not some rube that's just going to listen to her without thinking, she gets mad and shoves a hot sandwich warmer to the floor, causing damage to the equipment before storming out. I just don't understand some people. For those not familiar with convenience store policies and rules, here are some general guidelines. 1. Never go outside after dark. If you must go outside, make sure you stay on camera at all times. Number 2. Never come out from behind the counter at night if you're working alone. That counter is a barricade and form of protection for you. Number 3. Never let a customer follow you into an area that is off camera. Walk-in coolers are a common one. This is a good way to get shot in the head or the back. At the end of the day, those of us behind the counter are responsible for our own safety, and we need to take the steps to ensure it. To anyone that wants to say I should have gone and checked for whatever reason you care to mention, the possibility of allowing harm to come to myself is the deciding factor. My life is not worth making a $3 sale, and the cost of replacing a piece of equipment is the price worth paying if it means I get to come home to the wife and child I have waiting on me. I agree with you 100%. All you were doing was your job, and if they want to get mad and throw a fit, all it does is show them that they kinda had ill intentions, because if I've learned anything, guilty people usually freak out. Alright, that's enough tales for the day. Well, that wraps up this episode of Tales from Retail. If you liked the video, please drop a like, share my content on all of your social media, subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure to hit that bell so you're notified every time I upload. And drop a comment down below. It really helps with the algorithm and helps new people find my channel. Thanks for watching, thanks to my patrons, have a great day and stay safe out there.